If you have studied in a vernacular medium or have not studied English primary language and you are struggling while speaking in English, or you are not able to walk that extra mile in your career, this video might be helpful for you. Hi, my name is Barnali. I'm a law graduate and a corporate lawyer. I'm also a mother, currently on a small motherhood break. In this video, we are going to discuss about few tips and tricks that can help you in taking up that extra step to make your English sound more professional, or for that matter, learn English on your own. Now, before we begin, I would like to give a few disclaimer that these are few tips and tricks that I have personally applied on myself, and these are not very science-based or research-based tips. So if you want a more professional course, I can suggest a few more courses in a separate video. Please do let me know. So if you want to know about these tips and tricks, keep on watching. It will be better if I give a little background about myself before we start with the actual tips and tricks. As I mentioned, I'm a law graduate, but up until 10+2, I was only able to study in Bengali medium. It was only when I went to universities to study law, I was actually made to study, speak and read only in English. So you can imagine the first 2 semesters of my law studies were very difficult for me because all my other classmates, they were well versed with the language. My results in fact were not that great because I was still struggling to understand and write and speak in English. So I realized that before it's too late, I have to work on my English so that I can take that path and my career to that extra mile. So these are the tips and tricks that I actually practiced and exercised to learn English myself. So we are going to talk about 6 tips and ways that I personally have utilized or used to learn English myself. First, and I would say the most important tip or the step that you have to follow is to correct your grammar. Now let's be honest, not speaking a very fluent English or not having that great vocabulary is still fine, as long as you are using the right words and simple English, it's still okay. Or as long as you are speaking slow English, that's still okay. But if your grammar is not correct, that's totally gonna spoil it for you. So having that perfect base and understanding of grammar is very important if you want to speak English fluently and nicely, and you want to really utilize that language for your progress in career. So I can make a separate video about the basics of grammar, but it basically narrows down to understanding your tenses, right? So there are only 3 tenses: present, past and future, and there in English language there are again subcategories like present indefinite, present continuous, present perfect and perfect continuous, similarly for other tenses also. And then getting your prepositions and conjunctions right is the key. So understand the grammar correctly, that's the most important point. You can watch various English teaching YouTube channels that actually teach the basics of grammar. There are multiple courses as well available that you can take up to understand the basics of grammar. So all these remaining tips and tricks work basically on the assumption that your grammar is correct and you are working on your grammar, and that's when this actual idea is going to work. But tip number 2 that I can say is you really need to start listening to a lot of podcasts or audiobooks that are in English. Why? Because somehow in our mind, when we are listening something, we keep on repeating that. When you are listening to any podcast, subconsciously you are practicing how they are speaking, you are picking up their pitches, etc. I will link down a few good podcasts in the description box below that can really help. Other thing that you can do is read a lot books. I mean to say English books, because reading really helps in understanding the language. So I can also list down a couple of my favorite books that are basic but gives a lot of understanding of the language. Third point is about practicing. Now when they say it, practice makes a man perfect, it's true. You are expecting that you will be able to learn English just overnight. I'm sorry, but that will not happen. For you to be able to fluent in one language, you really have to practice. So a couple of tips for you to practice English is when we speak to ourselves, there is an inner voice that is constantly speaking with us, right? So try to consciously make that effort that whenever you're speaking to yourself, you form that sentence in English. Now you might be thinking, what is she even saying? But it's true. Whenever you are speaking in your mind, it will not happen automatically, but you have to make that conscious effort that you are speaking to yourself or forming that sentence in your mind in English. It will take time, but just keep on practicing. The other thing that you can also do is whenever you are in front of the mirror, just practice random sentences in English. You see how your body language is flowing with the language. You can, if you have somebody nearby, just try to respond to whatever they are asking in English. So what I mean to say is, in whatever way or form you can at home, just keep on practicing that language and it will automatically come and in place where you are able to form the sentence. Fourth tip that I would say is consistency is key. It can so happen that you really start with the practice or with your grammar practice for that matter very well in the beginning, but down the line you might feel very demotivated. But do not do that. You really have to take up that effort to keep it in practice consistently. Language is like an art, because you can get hold of that only when you have given enough time to it. So I would say you don't have to be very hard on yourself. It might take you a couple of months or even years. So let's not get disheartened. Consistently keep on practicing, and that's when you will see results. The fifth point that I wanted to make is, whenever you are speaking a language, try to speak in that language in totality. What do I mean? Nowadays I see a lot of people are speaking in English, but it's not actually English, it's Hinglish. So they are mixing up Hindi with English, or Banglish for that matter, Bengali with English. That is the worst thing that one can do. So having that due respect towards that language, and for your betterment as well, speaking one specific language at a time is very, very important. Mixing up things will never make you perfect in one language first, and that also shows some kind of impatience. So when you are forming a sentence in your mind, the closest word that comes in your mind, you try to put that in that sentence. It can be from any language that you know. So that's when the mixing up of languages happen. So try consciously to avoid that and speak only in one language. When you are speaking in English, it should only be English. Even if you are stuck in forming a sentence because you are not able to find out that perfect word that you want to use, do not skip to other language. Just take it slow. Try to form that sentence and that speak in that specific language only. Take your time, form that sentence. And speaking of that, my sixth point is speaking slow. When I say the most important point is correcting your grammar, I would say the second most important point here is to understand that speaking slow has its own power. We often think that speaking fast gives us that fluency, which is not true. It's only true that when we are nervous or we are anxious, we end up speaking very fast, and that's when we make all those mistakes like putting in incorrect grammar, not using the right word, or having that right pitch of voice. So I cannot emphasize enough how speaking slow can help you. If you are trying to form a sentence, if you are speaking slow, you are going to have that extra time that is going to help you in forming that sentence correct, and you are definitely not going to speak grammatically incorrect English, or you are not going to utilize or use wrong words. So speak slow. Don't think that if you are speaking slow it will sound that you are not fluent. It's not true. Take your time, and slowly you will see automatically your pitch and your speed will get better. So in the beginning, that's very important. Just keep that in mind. Just quickly wanted to highlight a couple of pros and cons of this method. Number one is, of course, it is fun. You are going to listen to a lot of podcasts, read books, and in the process you are going to learn. Not something that you are taking up as an extra curriculum activity. It's going to be part of your entertainment process, and in the process you are going to. Pro number two is there is no cost involved. You are going to learn at your own pace, at your own rhythm, without any cost involved. So that's very flexible. Pro number three is practicing something on your own or building something on your own experience makes you more confident. When you are being taught, particularly in language, you are learning it from somebody else, it doesn't give you that confidence, and trust me when I say that, it really does not. So when you are trying to learn it on your own and you are practicing on your own, it is going to build up a lot of confidence down the line when you start speaking in that language. A couple of cons. The first point, when I mentioned that you have to learn grammar correctly, it can be a little intimidating because there is so much out there in the internet that it can be a little confusing. So I would suggest that you pick up one good learning lesson when you are starting to learn the grammar. That will be helpful instead of just going around and getting all confused up. Number two, as I mentioned earlier, these tips and techniques that I mentioned are not really research based. These are my own experiences and might work for you or might not even work for you. So I would say just as it feels right to you, just start practicing, start learning. At the end of the day, learning a language is never easier, but you have to start somewhere so that you can take up that extra mile. So I would say just start practicing. It might be a little intimidating in the beginning, but it is only going to bring you that worth and confidence when you really master that language. So I hope this video can bring you a little help. I hope you will be able to utilize the tips and tricks that I discussed. Some of them also work. That is also great. And if you have any further questions, you can always leave them down in the comment box, and I look forward to meeting you again, and thank you so much for watching.